Hello, good morning. Um, we're back again. It's December. Today is 13th of December. And I'm sure many of us are looking forward to Christmas. So, yeah, I'm here again, your host, Susuana Olatunji Komalafe, and to continue our conversation on conscious bias. Um, I believe most of us, in so many ways, have been seeing comments and a lot of people picking interest in this conversation on conscious bias. Um, and I believe the conversation is going gradually, is generating the kind of conversation which I'm hoping we can start having. And that is creating awareness around our biases, taking accountability of those actions, of those thoughts, of those uh, decisions that are rooted in our foundation, and how that conscious bias has influenced most of us. Today, we're going to continue. Um, I'm just going to go through some of the things we're going to go through. Then I'll focus on what I really want to focus on today, which is based on the foundation of the key areas of our conscious bias. So there's three areas of conscious bias which we agree to have a conversation around, which are gender, race, and religion. Gender, race, and religion. So we've talked about gender, we've talked about race, and we're supposed to proceed to gender. But before we produce to go ahead and start talking about gender, religion, I quickly wanted to touch on the foundational aspects of our conversation, which is consciousness, aspect of it, and just hoping that we can all engage equally on this conversation. So one of the foundational thing, the key foundational conversation I want to talk about is culture in terms of the concept, ideology of conscious bias, conscious culture as the foundation, because I understand that when we talk of gender, we talk of race, we talk of religion. Under gender, when we're talking about understanding biases relating to gender representation, when we talk about addressing racial prejudice and stereotype that affect us based on race, when we talk about exploring tied to biases that are tied to religion, beliefs, this is something we need to address. The core thesis, which is a cultural consciousness bias, the cultural consciousness bias. These are the unseen architects. The conscious bias is not just an absence of biases. We know when we talk about when we're saying, when we talk about biases, the consciousness of bias is not the absence. We're not talking about absence of biases. We're talking about taking accountability. We're talking about acknowledging our awareness of who we are, of what we do, on how our culture is the foundation that influences most of the biases we have. But to be intentional and having this cultural centric curation of it, coming to that kind of cultural centric, and then understanding those basics of that. You know, what are these core theses that we're talking about? That culture is not a background, but the foundation. So, because culture is the foundation of the key aspects of our conscious biases, which are race, religion, and gender. So, it's the foundation system which we operate within. So, what I'm saying is that we should be guided within this thought of leadership positioning. It's a frame that it's a frame work in which we need to, when we lay down the foundation of conscious bias, we have to lay down the foundation one of the bases and the lay foundation of the conversation and the kind of leaders we want to start seeing. leaders that are not that are culturally, understand cultural bias and put that concept into conversation. So, a cultural conscious bias, which is designed to build for engagement, thought leadership, and virtual appeal on cultural conscious biases, putting culture in the center of focus, with where we put culture in the center of knowing that culture is the center of attraction. When you talk about gender, what does gender says what does culture says about gender, and how does this affect our biases? When we talk about race, what does our culture believe with regard to our races? Race foundational thought on that, and how does that affect our conscious biases, and how does that play out within the, how do we play this out? So I give an example. I live in Ireland. I can say that Ireland is my home. I've made Ireland my home. But no matter how much I make Ireland my home, it's the it would be so unethical, unreal for me to feel that it can be more of a home for me than an Irish person that was born and bred it, that this has been their great grandfather. This is their home. Father, great grandfathers, great parents. It can be more Irish. I can't be more Irish than them. Even I can't be more Irish than them. And no matter how much I make it a home, I have to be aware of that. It's just culturally, consciously aware of that. And that is what we're saying. And when decisions are making, so when an Irish person makes this, these have this biases, the fact that this is my home. We just have to step aside and acknowledge it, understand where that is culturally coming from, and understand when they say it is my home, and when they want I'm inclusive, but there's a boundary to my inclusiveness, and allow those boundaries to function without us feeling biased about it, or feeling that it has anything to do either with your gender, with our race, or with our religion. So we know culturally this is the foundation basis of who an Irish person is, for example, that they are Catholics, they are people of faith. That's one thing we know them to be. So if you come to their environment where they are, and this is practical example I'm talking about. So when you come into Ireland and you expect them to conform in every way to your own religion without taking into consideration their own cultural conscious bias, cultural foundation of who they are is not put into consideration, and you just want them to consider and say they are being biased, then you're not being a thought leader in that aspect. So it doesn't, you're not being a thought leader, it doesn't shows you as if you're not being a thought leader, and that does not demonstrate the fact that you are culturally conscious of those things. So, where is your awareness when you're talking about that? Where does that place you? So, these are the conversations we want to have when we're talking about cultural. These are the foundation, these are the conversations we want to talk about. So, these are the conversations that we want to take prominent positions in our daily lives. And these are the things we want to see when we talk about that, and how important this is to us. So our conversation will focus really which we need to really engage and start having conversation on those foundational conversation around culture, which is the foundation, culture, which is the foundation to most of our conversation. When we talk about conscious bias, we have to talk about the culture as a foundation to all the key aspects, those key aspects of culture. When we talk about race, when we talk about gender, when we talk about race, when we talk about gender, when we talk about religion, those things we need to be really aware of those in conversations and to make it a conversations that we talk about. So I want us to go through the headings for this conversation today, just to read through what the heading says and what I'm trying to get us to think about. So, as a pioneer of conscious bias strategist, my core message is to say culture is centric focus. So I'm saying let's make culture the foundational focus of our conversations when we want to discuss the key aspects of conscious bias. So we often discuss biases in terms of gender. So when we're discussing biases in terms of gender, in terms of religion or race, but these exist within a cultural environment operating system. So what I'm saying there is that it exists within a cultural foundation operating system. So your gender, your religion, your race, it exists within your culture. So culture conscious bias is the practice of seeing, questioning, and intentionally navigating the unwritten rules, values, and behavior codes that defines our workplace and society. So a conscious bias approach to a cultural examines the hierarchy and the directness embodied in terms of communication, is a differential styles which misread as a lack of confidence, is directness perceived as aggression. It could that's the way, and a cultural conscious leader intentionally creates multiple equitable channel for contributions and credits. So that is why I'm saying that for you to be a thought leader, for you to be a cultural conscious leader, you have to, and when you talk about the key aspect of bias, cultural bias, conscious bias, which are religion, which could be we're talking about gender and race. You have to understand that it exists within a cultural operating system. So I'm making this move. This is, from the conversation. I'm taking the conversation beyond surface level of diversity. I want to provide the lens and tools to decode a cultural framework, transforming frictions into synergy and building organization where true cultural inclusion is the energy of innovation. I mean, true cultural inclusiveness is that energy of innovation. When you talk about innovation, it has to be an inclusiveness without dimming other people's lights, without isolating other people. So the questions I want us to ask ourselves as this conversation continue is this: one, when you join the dialogue on cultural consciousness, let's discuss what is one unwritten cultural rules in your industry that creates exclusion within your own industry, whatever industry you are. Give us one unwritten cultural rule within that industry. That's the first question. That creates exclusion. How have you seen cultural fits used as a bias gatekeeper instead of valuing, where they're doing good, instead of valuing cultural contribution. So if you understand what I'm trying to say there, abusing within your own working environment, within your community where cultural fits is used as a bias gatekeeper instead of valuing cultural contribution. Share an example of when a cultural misalignment was mistaken for a performance issue. So these are the questions I want us to ask ourselves, and to address those conscious. Be aware of your biases when you're dealing with these questions, and this is the basis of this conversation. Understand those biases, take accountability for them, and build your leadership thought around this. So connect to build consciously inclusive an ecosystem. That's what it is, building that ecosystem whereby we're consciously aware of our cultural foundation. So what is the rationale behind this conversation? Culture is not a background, but the foundation system we operate within and to be guided within. And as thought leadership, when you position yourself as a framework on which my work as the next frontier, elevating the discussion from basic awareness to systematic cultural analysis. So this is where we're going with this. And the conversations on culture, conscious bias is the conversations that we're going to continue. We're going to talk about heritage that is not a relic. It is an operating system that our heritage is an operating system for the cultural heritage that provides the code, the symbol, the narratives, and the values that form the raw material for building our conscious bias. And to be culturally conscious is to actively plug into the operating system, so which is our heritage, and debug the colonial viruses, debunking that colonial viruses. Thought leadership in this spaces requires moving beyond awareness, so into actionable framework. So first is being aware, second is being accountable, taking responsibility and acting, be actionable, and it's about providing the tools to design new defaults. It is These are important aspects of this conversation on cultural conscious. When we talk about cultural conscious bias, these are conversations we want to have. These are the questions we need to start asking ourselves. Where do we position these important aspects of this conversation in terms of our cultural foundation? There's still so many things to talk about and just to really debug when it comes to cultural consciousness. So this is just the first of it. We're going to go again and go through it and have more conversations around it. And while we go back again and treat the key aspects of conscious bias, remember the three spaces we are staying on, we're focusing on when we're talking about the key aspect is gender, race, and religion. And what we're doing here with cultural consciousness is because we know that those three aspects of the key aspect of our conscious biases, they are the core, within, they resonate within our culture. They resonate within our culture. They resonate just within our culture. They cannot operate outside outside it. So you have to understand how that is. It resonates with it. It operates within it. Those three key aspects operates within, because it's the foundational system in which they do operate. So when we discuss biases in terms of our gender, religion, and race, just to understand that it exists within a cultural operating system. This is where it is. So it's like when we're talking about a computer, we talk about the what is the operating system for the computer. So you can't use a computer without the operating system. And it just doesn't really matter the lot of works we do on the computer. The operating system determines function of that computer. So you know what is the Windows you're using, is it these you're using. So those operating system really determines the functionality of your computer, and that is what culture does when it comes to conscious biases, because those key aspects in which we discuss conscious bias, which is our gender, race, and religion, these are the three we're focusing on. It operates within our culture, which is the foundation. It's not just the background, the foundation operating system of the conversation we are having. So yeah, we continue this conversation. I want us to put our comments in the chat space. What do you think? What are you thinking? How do you understand this conversation I'm having? What is your view on it? So put your questions in the comment space. Let's have this conversation. Let's dialogue. Let's, what are you thinking? Don't keep your thoughts to yourself. Had those thoughts within. Put the conversation right there. The questions are important. Let's have this conversation. Let's discuss this. So put them in the comment space. If you have a question you'd like to ask, use the opportunity to ask the questions. Let's know what you're thinking. If you're watching me either on LinkedIn or you're watching on YouTube channel or Twitter, wherever you have the opportunity to come across these or to watch these conversation that I'm presenting, tr- try and put your questions there for us. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss those questions you have. I have three questions which I'm putting in the comment space again. These are these are the questions. These are the questions I would like us to discuss about, and I'll put it in the comment space for all of us to when we're putting our comments, when we're having our conversation, when we're discussing it. Let us talk about this. Let's discuss it. Let's discuss what are these. Let's have this conversation. Let's have this discussion. These discussions are important, so don't let us put it away. So let's share examples of when a cultural misalignment was mistaken for a performance issue. So let's discuss that. Let's discuss those things. And you put those conversation in the comment space. And if you like to join me live in this conversation, send your request and then I can log you in and put you in the next conversation that we're having. Thank you so much for this. And now we just work it out.